Executive Committee. The first thing I'd like to do is to call for any apologies, and I know that Councillor Kevin Mitchell is not can't make it tonight, so we'll record his apologies in it. We've got the minutes of the 6th of September, which I'll sign as a true copy if everybody is happy with that. Okay, so those will be signed. And there is a couple of matters arising that I want to draw to, but before I do, I really want to mention and just ask us, I'm not going to ask you for a silence or to stand, just for a momentary pause for reflection for the passing of Councillor George Clark. George was a former mayor in the late 80s. We will obviously be making the appropriate acknowledgements at the next council elections, just for a pause for thought while I'm speaking, I suppose. But I wanted to mention it. He was a good friend of mine, a good friend of many people here in the council. Done a lot of good work in the Wamford area. Ended up living in Exeter, which is a sensible thing to do. I know the family very well indeed. Worked with him, and so it is sad his passing. I was so pleased, by the way, and thank you very much to Democratic Services and Mara and the team, John for being there, and the Lord Mayor, of course, for representing the city at his funeral last week. I know it was appreciated by the family and by everybody, and I just wanted to make those remarks. It was a sad time, and again, yes, it was a bit sudden. I spoke to Margaret. It was still a bit sudden, his passing. I mean, he was a good age, but it was sudden. So, okay, I just want us just to reflect on that, and which we are doing, and I feel sure at the appropriate time, John, at council, we will make further references to George. So we've got a matters arising, which we don't always do, but it was relating, I am minute 84, and you will recall minute 84 made reference to Councillor Pearce made reference to the cost of living. I did say we would bring something back to this meeting. I did say, and I don't want people, because it is a very important matter, the cost of living crisis. And I'm not going to pass it by. A lot of work has been done by the officers, but since then we've had the passing of Queen Elizabeth. There was a mourning period. A lot of meetings were put on hold. A lot of work couldn't be done because other areas were going. And of course, without making too many political points, I'll leave that to Councillor Pearce in a moment. Without making too many political points, the fact is we've not had too much guidance from central government on how to deal with it as a local authority. So I'm going to hand over to Bindu to tell us so far where we are. Bindu.
Thank you, Chair. So officers have put together information on how the city is mobilising to support those people affected by cost of living pressures. So to date, we've identified a significant number of organisations in the public sector, business and community and voluntary sectors, all of who are working to support individuals, families and businesses. The City Council is of course included in that list, which I previously shared with members in terms of everything that we're doing to try and support families and individuals who are affected. More offers are becoming known almost every day, which is, I suppose, positive in terms of the intention of those cities. Obviously not positive that people require that help. So what I have, Chair, if it's helpful, is a list. The list is going to be continually updated through the communities team under John Paul Hedge. And the idea is that wherever possible, the City Council officers who are coming into contact with either individuals or families or businesses who are contacting us asking what is possible, that we continue to signpost alongside the work that we'll be doing, for example, with people who are finding it difficult to pay us money that is owed to us. So we're having conversations with them about how we can make arrangements so we make those more sustainable. Families that are in our social housing, again, we're having conversations with them to make sure that we're making them fully aware of all the support that's available to them, not necessarily within the City Council, but more widely. So our role at the moment, Chair, is making sure that we are as up to date as we can be what support is available, and then signposting to people who need it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It isn't a matter arising, so I'm not throwing you an open for discussion. We will bring in hopefully a report to a future meeting which will allow members to discuss it appropriately. But just a quick remark from work for the work you're still carrying on with this, Councillor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for the opportunity just to give a further update. I just want to start by thanking Bindu and all the officers who've stepped up and been amazing on this and doing this work alongside their already heavy schedules. It's been really, really pleasing to see, and kind of makes me proud really to be able to call Exeter my home. You know, it's a great city. Through the pandemic, we saw an amazing response from the council and from the community sector and from all the residents to sort of pull together, and that's happening again right now in real time. You know, and a lot of this is a fight really we shouldn't be involved in as a city council. Where it's not our statutory duty, but we cannot stand by while this government does what it seems set on doing. They might look like lightweights with the amount of U-turns they're making, but they're landing blows that would rock Tyson Fury and heavyweight. So we need to get involved in this fight and make sure that our residents are supported throughout. So it's really great that this list is going to be there. It's going to be pushed out to as many people as possible, and as Bindu pointed out, it's going to be continuously updated. In addition to signposting and opening up some of our own warm spaces, there's going to be a repurposing of some of the community grants funding that has already been set aside. So there's going to be a pot of £10,000 made available where people will be able to apply for a grant of up to £500 to help meet the costs, the additional costs that they're going to be faced with over this winter. There's a new application form that's going to be going live very soon through the council grants website. And although this is a repurposing of already allocated funds, it's not penalising anybody who's already put an application in under the old schemes. All those have been dealt with already, so there's no applications pending that aren't going to be able to access funds as a result of our site repurposing. But we just feel it's so important that organisations who are opening up warm spaces to support our communities, that we can support them where we can. So there'll be more information to follow, and if anybody's got any questions in the future, please drop me an email, and I'll make sure that you're kept up to date with all that. But thank you for the opportunity to speak, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. As I said, that was a matter arising, a point of information and a point of clarification, and I stretched it quite a bit. But I think it was important in view of the energy crisis, where that would have been two executives, otherwise we just couldn't have sat here and said absolutely nothing about it. So thank you very much, and it's a question of what's this space. So moving on, we got the please remember to any declarations of interest. I do not believe item 4 there is any part 2 matters on this occasion. Thank you, Mark. Number 5, I do not believe we've had any questions. No public questions, and so we move straight on now to item 6, which is the corporate plan. And here we have the recommendation, which I will move. That executive notes the council approves the council's 2022 to 26 draft corporate plan. Any necessary drafting amendments before publication will be delegated to the Chief Executive and Growth Director in consultation with the leader of the council. Who's bringing it? Bindu.
Thank you, Chair. So the Council's draft corporate plan, which is before you this evening, sets out how the Council will play our role in delivering the agreed Exeter Vision 2040. So to achieve this vision for the city, the Council is focused on 5 strategic priorities. And our intention is to deliver on those 5 strategic priorities through our existing plans and strategies. For example, the Exeter plan, which I'm sure the Director for City Development and the portfolio holder would want me to reference, as well, of course, of the various service plans across the council. I'd like to also, Chair, highlight the focus in the corporate plan on leading a well-run council, which underlines the vital importance of making sure that we have a fit-for-purpose organisation in order that we can deliver on those priorities. The priorities, Chair, will be reviewed as part of the plan annually, and regular progress update will be provided to the Strategic Management Board and members. That's an overview, Chair. If there are any questions or any desire to have a more detailed presentation, Bruce will be happy to take you through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bindu. And before I open it up for anybody to speak, we were going to have an all members briefing, but sadly it fell during the morning period, and we felt it was only appropriate not to. We just hadn't been managed to have another briefing, but it was important that this document came before one, the executive now, and clearly full council in October. I did not want to leave it until December. So it is a visionary statement, so I'll hand it over. I don't know if the leader, if you want, I won't call you on every item. If you've got something, just let me know if you want to speak. So I'll come. So your contribution, Councillor Johnson.
Well, I would just say, I think the all members briefing, I know it's going to be out of sequence, but if it can be slotted in, I think it'd be extremely useful. As you know, there are some worrying features when you read through it, particularly on the finance side. It'd be useful to have that in due course.
Okay. Are we okay with that? So I'll look forward to hearing what those worrying features are, Councillor Johnson. Is there any other contributions from members? No? Okay, you've got the recommendations there. I'll move from the chair. I'll have a seconder, please. Councillor Wright. All those in favour?
Unanimous vote, Chair. Oh, sorry. So unanimous vote, Chair. That has the recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. And so we move on to item 7, which is a catering provision at Edwards Court. Councillor Devon move the recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Before I go to recommendations, there is an amendment to the recommendation. Yeah. Before I move on to read the recommendations, we do have an amended recommendation, which Bindi will now read. Okay, and then we can go forward.
Chair, with your permission, before I go on to the proposed amended recommendation, if I could just sort of say a few words about the scheme in general. So members have received previous reports on the council's extra care scheme contained of 51 flats. The scheme is owned and managed by the City Council, with the care element of the provision being commissioned by the County Council. So I'm pleased to let members know that as of this week, we have 5 tenants in Edwards Court, and I think a future 5 lined up, and a healthy lot of applications coming forward. In fact, one of our tenants is a 100-year-old woman who previously was at Wren's house. So it's obviously really lovely to be able to offer that provision. So the report before you this evening, Chair, relates to the provision of catering at Edwards Court. It had been our intention to look to commission that externally. Unfortunately, we've had an unsuccessful tendering exercise, and our market intelligence leads us to believe that we wouldn't be any more successful if we went back out to the market, and that, of course, is because of some of the current uncertainties around inflationary costs. So the proposal is for us to provide the service in-house, which obviously is contained within the report. So I'd just like to update members on the current position in regard to that catering proposal. Since we've drafted that report, we've continued to do further work to understand the impact on the estimated increasing costs and the impact obviously on the City Council. So the further analysis of the projected cash flow identifies that the financial return over a projected 30-year period will be reduced in the region of 3 million as a result of us providing the service in-house. And again, Chair, this is because of the projected increases in costs as a result of inflation. And at the moment, that is our best estimate, but the current economic climate is a little hard to predict. So we absolutely continue to acknowledge the value of providing catering to residents in Edwards Court, including creating a communal area which helps to prevent social isolation and provides tenants with a daily 2-course hot meal. So still committed to that. So our concern, though, Chair, is that whilst we are contractually and otherwise committed to using our best endeavours to provide that, we can't ignore the impact on the council's housing revenue account, which, as you will hear later from the finance director, is under strain. So we have therefore begun conversations with the county council, who is our partner, as I said earlier, in this scheme. We're just trying to understand from them how they might perhaps help support us in terms of how we address those increased costs. This recognises not only the benefit of catering to the residents, but also it has a positive impact on the care delivery costs of the county council. So to reflect the ongoing work, Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment to the recommendations in the report. So the new recommendation, if agreed, would be that executive supports and council agrees to, subject to the outcome of discussions with Devon County Council, the Deputy Chief Executive, in consultation with the portfolio holder for housing and customer services, is given delegated powers to agree: 1, that Exeter City Council provides in-house catering at Edwards Court, and 2, that the City Council creates and recruits to the following posts: head chef, assistant head chef, and 2 catering assistants, all of who will be contracted for 25 hours per week, and the estimated grades at the moment, obviously subject to job evaluation, are grades F, D, and B respectively. That would constitute, of course, an increase to the council staffing establishment, Chair. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And before we get into it, the number of the positions and the hours they do in their grades is something that we are consulting through the normal machinery with the trade unions, and it's not a matter for us to resolve. So I don't want to get into all of that. It's not our remit at this stage to deal with it. So I just wanted to add that. So, got any contributions? Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much for this report. I would support the provision of this service in-house. But I'd just like to pick up on the, obviously some assumptions have been made during the costings and the quality of the food that's being provided. I'm sure the quality will be good, but I do think there is an issue connected to item 12 on this report, which says there's no direct carbon or environmental impacts arising from the recommendations. So, but obviously the production of food and its processing does have environmental and carbon impacts, not only in its production, but also in terms of the quality provision for residents. So I hope that this is something that can be considered as this service is rolled out. Thank you.
Okay. No, okay. Are there any other contributions? Councillor Wright and then Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Chair. Aside from the actual issue that this report was brought forward, I would just like to say how pleased I am to hear that we've got people in Edwards Court now, and how I know how hard the housing teams work trying to iron out all of the potential difficulties with such a new thing. I'll leave Councillor Denning to say more, but just on the last part, the carbon footprint, I would perhaps argue that this doesn't give a positive or negative difference to carbon footprint, because the people in there are going to have to eat anyway, regardless of who puts the food on the table.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morse.
Firstly, I was going to mention the same thing. I'm sure there is no additional carbon, would probably be the sentence that needs to be there, because yeah, the people need to eat isn't because they're living in Edwards Court, it's because they're human and they eat. I want to support this because I do think this is a wonderful idea. It's been a long time coming and we've worked really hard on it. And I also just wanted to say that every time we talk about Edwards Court, it makes me smile, and that's a really lovely thing, and it's a really nice legacy for somebody to have, like someone like Pete.
Good. Councillor Wood.
Just to say that I understand that this is about catering at Edwards Court, but we shouldn't actually forget that Edwards Court is one of the UK's first passive house extra care homes. So if we're going to talk about carbon footprint, then I think that's a key one to remember, because it's more significant than than the carbon footprint around the food that will be produced. As Councillor Wright has said, that food would be produced. Now, I think that far more important is to recognise this council's commitment to building passive house or equivalent standard homes. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Denning, your portfolio.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I'd like to agree with what Councillor Wood has said. Okay, it's a marvellous building. I mean, we're arranging for people to come in, councillors to come and have a visit so that they can see. And it again shows what Exeter can do and leads on, can I say, when it comes to I can never say that word, Pavy House. Okay, the tenants are happy. I did go out actually the other day on Lawrence's request so that I could go and have a look and see, and it's just a marvellous place. The thing that I want to do, because I know that Bindu has, we've done the recommendations, is say that Lawrence has worked so hard in actually, so I really want to thank him. I don't think people realise the hard work that has gone into this, and the Laura as well as part of it. We've got happy tenants, okay, and we can talk about carbon footprint and we can talk about meals and everything like that. But what we've got is a state-of-the-art first Pavy home for people who really need it, and I think we should look at that more than what we are at carbon footprints for meals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid you're going to have to say within your portfolio holders role passive house quite often. So anyway, so we've got I know. So we got the two recommendations as put forward by Bindu. I'll move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wright. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show.
That's unanimous vote in favour, Chair. The recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. And then move on to item 8, which is Operation London Bridge. And here is a recommendation that we note an urgent decision which has been taken under the normal protocols, which was signed off by myself and the Chief Executive. And so I'm going to ask John Street to talk to the paper. Please, John.
Thank you, Leader. As you say, this is a matter just for noting for the Executive tonight, bearing in mind that it was an urgent decision was taken to incur the expenditure that was necessary at the time for London Bridge. But that we have got a fairly detailed report because the Chair of Scrutiny, who also was co-signatory to the urgent decision, asked for that to be put forward to go to his committee later this week. So it seems sensible that the same report came to both. The report is self-explanatory as to the role that Exeter took in commemorating Her late Majesty's passing and the Operation Bridge that went on for 10 days. Despite 7 years in the making or the planning for London Bridge and 124 pages of documents that there was to back it up, it was actioned within minutes of it being necessary to do so, and I think was showed Exeter and the people of Exeter and the surrounding areas how Exeter does things and does things well. But I'm happy to answer any questions that there may well be if there are any.
Thank you, John. And I would just like to add at this stage that it was a marvellous performance by all the team, all council workers, street cleaners, bins, the parks team who got Northern A right, also the work with on the day of the proclamation, which was I won't say a shock to us, but we weren't anticipating nearly 3,000 or just over 3,000 people when we came out that door. I was so pleased to see so many councillors involved. It was, I think the city showed good respect on that day. I'd like to also formally thank the Lord Mayor, who actually visited something like 12 wards in the RD&E and also, 12 homes, and actually visited other people's homes. It was an idea. She was very keen to do that, taking the condolence book there, visiting the RD&E, going to the prison and coming out again. The media work that was done by everybody was absolutely fantastic. We really demonstrated that Exeter is in the heart of the civic sort of processes here in Devon. So once again, I would like to say on behalf of the executive, thank you to all employees. Now, I would like to, I will speak to them personally, particular people, but I think it would be unfair to everybody else to particularly mention. They know who they are. They all worked incredibly hard. That first day, that first Thursday, for example, you were still here, gone 9 o'clock, John, if I remember right away, stayed on. So again, you went beyond the call of duty to do all of that. And I need you and all the employees to recognise that we have recognised the work that you've done. So I don't know if there's anybody else wants to make a contribution.
I would just like to echo what you have just said, Councillor Pilot. I think it showed the city in good light. Everyone must have worked extraordinarily hard to do that, and congratulations to everyone who did.
Okay, I think John Paul Hedge wanted to come in. John Paul.
Chair, can I just add, on behalf of the City Council, I thank the SWAT partners who also did that. In terms of Sandy Park, and they expressed privately, Sandy Park, who acted so swiftly in order to show the screening, the football club, and also the hard work the cathedral did.
Absolutely, and there were a part of the London Bridge, there's this protocol, London Bridge Protocol, which I wondered what it was all about when I got that big dossier when I was leader as well. It's one of those things you just don't think is going to happen, you know, and you go through it and you think, oh, wow, this ain't going to happen, because, you know, for all of us in this room, it's been part of all our lives, if you know what I mean. But a lot of work went into it, a lot of partners, the number of people who've been involved across the city in agencies and organisations, and the work to get it all done. I just thought it was just simple, but it wasn't. I can see what the work was, and a lot of work. So well done, everybody, an excellent job. And I'll move the recommendation, which is to note the decision. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 9 now, which is amendments to the scheme of delegation, and there's one recommendation here that we approve these changes. John.
Thank you, Leader. This is the annual report which comes to Executive about this time of year each year, just to update the officers' scheme of delegation to bring it in line with operational changes that there may be, or changes in titles, etc. I can assure you there are no additional delegations being given to officers. It's just a rearrangement of them to make sure that operational requirements are still continuing.
Thank you. Do you have any? No. So you've got the recommendation there. Is there any contributions? No. I'll move the recommendation from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please, Laura? All those in? Yes. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, Mark. Item 10 is a minor amendment to the parliamentary polling districts and polling places for Exeter and East Devon constituencies, and we've got one recommendation here. And John, over to you again.
Thank you, Leader. This is a report which is making 2 minor adjustments to polling districts within the city. The first was within the St Thomas area, where 2 polling districts are being recommended to be combined into one, which should make it more easily accessible for members of the public to get to, and also will ensure that there will be just 1 polling station used in that area instead of 2. And the second one is just a very small tidying up area within the Topsham area, or bringing a number of houses within the polling district. Happy to answer any questions. This is, at the end of the day, a council decision for the polling districts, but where the polling stations are a decision of the returning officer.
Thank you. Yes, we're aware of that one. Is there any points that wish to be made? No. So all those in favour of the recommendation, I'll move it from the chair. Second, please, Laura. All those in favour. Goes with the role as deputy. Thank you. We move on now to item 11. which is the overview of the general fund revenue budget 22-23 quarter one. There are 5 recommendations within this, which are, you got them on the board behind me. I won't read them all, there's a number of them. And so I'll ask Dave Hodgson, please, to talk to the paper.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out the current financial position or projected position for the general fund. And as you've heard a number of times tonight, there is a cost of living challenge, and that impacts the council itself just as much as households and other businesses. So we have 2 significant financial pressures this year. Firstly, the pay award, which is not yet agreed, but the proposed pay award is some £1.5 million more than we budgeted for. And secondly, our own energy costs are substantially higher than anticipated. Even with the government support for 6 months, we're looking at around £600,000 more this financial year for energy. And the outcome of that is obviously that would be a significant overspend on our budget. So £2 million, in excess of £2 million, partially offset by vacant posts. So we are having some trouble recruiting across the council, and that's no different to other organisations both within the city and nationally, not just public sector, private sector as well. And also members will recall that during COVID we set aside an earmark reserve of £4 million to address budget volatility. We have some challenges in the budget coming back in terms of income levels. So we set aside £4 million. We are going to have to use £2 million of that to ensure that our general fund balance remains where we expect it to be in the medium-term financial plan. Members are aware that that can only be spent once. So we've used half the money we set aside this year. The pressure from the pay award, £1.5 million more, must be addressed going into next year. Energy, if the government do not extend the help, the support, the cap on energy, it's anticipated our energy costs will be 2.25 million more than our budget this year. So significant challenges ahead, and members need to be aware that that needs to be addressed. I would like to say in section 4, it says the general fund working balance is projected to stand at 2.465. It's not. It's projected to stand at 4.5 million because we've made those changes using the earmark reserve. So we're above. I'm not asking for action to be taken now. We're not below, and we're not projecting to go below the minimum working balance. However, work needs to start to address the challenges for the next financial year. They're significant challenges for the general fund. 2 more things I'd like to highlight, or 3 more things I'd like to highlight. In the appendices, you have some challenging budgets, particularly some income budgets. They're highlighted in Appendix 4, areas of key budgetary risk. And then there's 2 new appendices this year, one reporting on the performance against the reductions that were approved last year. And I'm pleased to say we're only around £30,000 lower than the 2.2 million that we anticipated delivering. And the final one is an analysis of the progress against the One Exeter transformation programme, highlighted red, amber, green, so you can see where we are in relation to each of the sections of the One Exeter report. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Any contributions? No. Oh, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask about the appendix on page 155, which is appendix 6, and the income generation programme, which is identified as high risk. In terms of addressing that issue, is there going to be proposed further budget cuts, or do you think there's a possibility of turnaround before the end of the financial year?
Okay. And anything else? Leave it to the end. I'd like to mop up a bit all at the end, David, if possible.
Only to say, I know we're going to get a report in November, and I hope we get that in time so we can actually go through the figures in some detail. I'm sure we will. But I think it's really important that in November we have enough time to go through the figures and some detail.
I'm sure if things stay constant for more than one day, we will make it in time. Are there any other contributions or questions? Councillor Pearce.
I'd like to thank Dave and his team for all the work they've done on bringing this together. But I mean, that number that you just read out there about energy, 2.25 million, sounds like one of those heavyweight blows landing to me. I mean, I just can't believe we're in a situation where we're having to respond to this on top of all the savage austerity cuts that we've dealt with over the last 12 years as a council. You know, it's just 12 years of misstep has led to this extreme exposure this country is living through to the market volatility, because the energy market's completely failed. And here we've got a really stark example of it, that no matter what we do as a council, we're going to be faced with potentially having to make further difficult decisions as things go forward, because we don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next at the moment, and it's just really shocking. But just really thanks to Dave and his team for the great work they're doing, and the prudent financial management that they've delivered over the past few years. That means that there is that earmarked reserve for us to dip into in the short term, and hope that action is taken elsewhere.
Thank you. Anyone else at this moment? Okay. Councillor Morse.
It actually relates to 2.25 million, which, you know, we were aware of, but it sounds really brutal when you hear it said in a room where things are being recorded, doesn't it? It makes it a bit more real. As a council, that's a ridiculous amount of money, but I think it's not just us that are suffering that. We had a report at the beginning about how we're going to keep people warm because they can't pay their own bills. Businesses in this city are seeing their bills go up by the same amount of money. And I think it's just echoing what Councillor Pearce has just said, that this is not a way for a country to operate. We're on the brink of something here that is truly terrifying. And, you know, we'll try to find that 2.25 million, but I'm really scared of what our services will look like moving forward. And it is at no fault of our own.
No, thank you. There's no more. Just before you come in, Dave, I think if you're only 30,000 short of the 2.3 million, you're doing very well on all of that, very well indeed. And so the direction of travel is, you know, but of course we've all come to expect that. That's our problem with you, I'm afraid. We've all come to expect that you'll deliver on this, but I don't think even you anticipated what was going to happen in the last couple of weeks. So, David, if you can just draw that point that Councillor Moore spoke to.
Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify, the 2.3 million is last year's that you all approved in February, and we're reporting against that, and we're around 30,000 short of the 2.3 million, which actually in overall terms is not a bad delivery of a savings or reduction programme. In terms of commercialisation, one Exeter is a 4-year programme, and commercialisation, it was always anticipated it would take a little time, and so the targets for the commercialisation section are more towards the end of the programme. So there was nothing identified for the 2023-24 budget in terms of commercialisation, but commercialisation in itself isn't easy. If it was easy, the private sector would be doing it, and therefore there wouldn't be something for us to do. So it's something that's rightly highlighted in red. A number of tenders. If we bid for other public sector, the other public sector bodies like ourselves have procurement regulations to follow, and therefore we need to bid, and we win or we lose, they have to follow the same value for money process as us. So we've had a couple of contracts that we bid for and not been successful, and therefore it's right that we highlight to members that it's challenging. But in terms of the One Exeter programme for 23-24, nothing was envisaged for it. However, as I've just said, we do have more financial pressures than were initially anticipated at the time the One Exeter programme was put forward.
Okay, thank you, David. So we've got 5 recommendations of which we're to note and to approve where applicable. I'll move those from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please?
Chair.
All those in favour?
That's unanimous vote, Chair. Recommendations have been carried.
Thank you. We now move on to item 12, which is the General Fund Capital Monitoring Statement for the first quarter. And here there are 2 recommendations, and I'll ask David to talk to his paper.
Thank you, Chair. So now we come on to the other great economic challenge of the current time. And I think this presentation of this report has probably changed about 12 times over the last week, because we have seen some unprecedented movements in the economy and in interest rates. So as a reminder to members, the amount that the council borrows at is linked to the amount that the government can borrow at, not to base rate. So the PWLB is set at about 1% more than what the government is paying. As you will have seen over the last week, there has been massive fluctuations in the cost of borrowing to central government and therefore to local government. The impact of the Bank of England's intervention last week has reduced the amount, so I would have been close to talking to you about 1% more than I'm going to in terms of the increase in cost of borrowing, but still interest rates that the council can borrow at are some 3%, 2.9% higher than they were in December 2021. That has a massive impact on your future borrowing. As a reminder, the long-term borrowing we've already undertaken was at a fixed rate. It's fixed, can't be changed, and therefore there will be no impact on monies that we've borrowed previously. But your future capital programme plans, we haven't borrowed for at this stage, and they're now 2.9% higher than the amount that was anticipated in the medium-term financial plan. Just to give you an indication, that means that every £1 million that we borrow will cost £30,000 a year more than we anticipated in the medium-term financial plan that you approved in February. So for 10 million, that's £300,000 extra, and that would result in additional reductions. So that's clearly on top of the pressures we've just discussed, is unsustainable, and therefore SNB are proposing to undertake a significant review of the capital programme to look at what can be deferred and what can be stopped. And those proposals will come back to members at the end of Q2 in the reports that you'll see in December and go to council in December. So in terms of the programme, notwithstanding everything I've just said, actually the current market makes it quite difficult to deliver capital projects at the moment. We're struggling to get tenders because contractors are uncomfortable with putting in bids because they're facing uncertainty with inflation, because they're facing problems with labour shortages, and they're facing problems with actually shortages of goods and materials. So you will see already, before we've undertaken a review, there's already £38 million of the capital programme is being proposed for deferral because there's no expectation of it being delivered this year. And therefore, I would probably be having this conversation with you each quarter in any case because of the challenges of delivering a capital programme. But we'll undertake a proper review and then bring it back to members. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. You got any? Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is all a very tricky area, isn't it? The £38 million capital programme, when it was introduced, was based upon risk assessments and assessments that are done on capital structures. So what will happen in terms of any review that identifies immediate risks that do need to be dealt with for public health and safety? And I just would like to also ask a question on Appendix 3, page 175, in relation to St Sidwell's point, which when will we know the final amount, and that will this be this financial year? This figure seems to suggest it's gone over budget. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Moore, I'm going to have to ask you to speak up a little bit more if you're going to talk again. Believe it or not, I do want to hear what you say. And yeah, it could be me, my problem, I don't know. But if you could, just so, okay, we take that at the end as how I like to do things. Are there any other comments here? No? You can deal with that. I mean, some of it relates to the paper, some of it doesn't. I'd rather you deal with the issues that relate to the paper, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the two questions, the first one, very good point. So we did a major condition survey that highlighted issues that needed addressing. You're absolutely right that first and foremost, number one priority will be health and safety issues. So if there's something that puts staff or the public at risk, that will absolutely be addressed. But it may be that in some cases, particularly if we're struggling to get a tenderer to do it, we may have to review that property or part of that property or structure, whatever that is. But you're absolutely right, health and safety will have to be addressed. So if there's a health and safety issue, they will not be coming forward with a recommendation for deferral. In terms of St Sidwell's point, it's in the hands of the lawyers, so they're working through that. I would expect it to be this financial year, and you're absolutely right, we will have to come back at some point because there's a small overspend as we currently stand, so there will have to be something back to council in this financial year. What we're hoping is it will be a one single report once the negotiations with Kia have been finalised.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got the recommendations before you. So I'm going to move them from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wright. All those in favour?
Unanimous vote, Chair. The recommendations have been carried.
Thank you. Now we move to item 13, which is the HRA budget monitoring report for the first quarter. Councillor Denning, can you move your recommendations, please?
Thank you, Chair. It is recommended the Executive note the report and council notes and approves, where applicable, 1, the HRA forecast financial position for 22-23 financial year, and 2, the revision of the HRA capital programme to reflect the reported variations detailed in Appendix 4.
Okay, David, I think you're going to say I'll refer you to a contribution I made some moments ago. If you'd like to talk to the HRA paper, please.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, the three issues that have affected general fund revenue and capital programme equally applicable to the HRA. So in terms of the pay award, that will have an impact of 138,000 over the budget. In terms of energy, next year, so the anticipated additional budget required for energy next year will be in the region of £350,000. So we're looking at around £500,000 of cost pressures on the HRA. In terms of interest rates, the HRA substantially funds its capital programme through its own resources, so it's not as reliant on borrowing as the general fund. Therefore, interest rates will have an impact where the HRA is seeking to borrow, and it tends to look to borrow for additionality, so that's additional properties. That will be a challenge, and I'm sure that the team will be reviewing the planned schemes in light of the interest rate rises. But for the vast majority of the maintenance and ongoing improvements to the existing properties, they're dealt with their own resources and therefore less susceptible. On the plus side for the HRA, the general fund uses its money and has to pay interest, and the amount of interest that we receive is higher, so the HRA will get quite a reasonable benefit from the interest payment it gets from the general fund this year. Again, happy to take any questions in terms of the overall financial position. Actually, not significant amount of movement.
Okay, thank you, David. Do we have any points? No, I'm going to open this up for any contributions from anybody. If Councillor Wright.
Sorry, Chair. I just wondered if it could be clarified that the borrowing to build more social housing in Exeter, which we're very proud that we're doing. Can you just confirm there's no sort of risk to that and that building programme can take place? Because I have seen it reported that the borrowing cost for that is something that we should maybe not be overly happy about, but we need to borrow to build, so the building is something that we are happy about. So can you just confirm that that is relatively safe and that building programme can go ahead, please?
Are there any other further contributions? If not, David, I'll allow you to clarify what Councillor Wright has asked you.
So in terms of the HRA, a few years ago we borrowed around £15 million to deliver new homes, and that's delivered. That has been borrowed at a fixed rate, same as the general fund fixed rate, very low, the lowest one we've ever taken out, I think. And what money is available from that and the plans that will deliver are absolutely fine. In terms of future plans, and there are significant future plans, they will need to be reassessed, and the team are reassessing those in light of the new borrowing. The interest rate that the HRA pays is exactly the same as the general fund, so it will also have gone up by 3%. That is quite significant when you're looking at affordable and social rent housing. So the team will absolutely have to look at that.
Okay, thank you, David. So we've got those two recommendations there, which I'll move from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour?
That's unanimous vote, Chair. The recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. We'll move on to item 14, which is a public art strategy for Exeter. And yes, you do have to move a little bit through to find the recommendation. So there's a recommendation here on page 199. Councillor Wright. And this is this big symbol movement, isn't it? In the orchestra.
Yeah, the Executive recommends Council to approve the public art strategy for Exeter, to implement it where feasible, and to support the work of the Liverpool Place Board, Exeter Culture, the cultural sector, local businesses and key stakeholders in delivering it.
John Paul Hedge.
Thank you, Chair. So this was about the fact that public art can make a meaningful contribution towards a great city, on community engagement and participation. At the heart of it, there was a commissioning process that went to Artwork Exeter, who then in turn consulted with artists and makers, curators, commissioners, consultants, just about everyone within the city and also outside it. The strategy that's in front of you proposes that all art for the city, and that includes public art, should meet key criteria around quality, inclusion, sustainability, and that a shared set of values be adopted by all partners to foster positive contributions and partnership working around this. It's not just for us at Exeter City Council, it's for city planners, for developers, for private landlords, anyone with any responsibility for activity around culture that takes place in the public realm. And we're going to work with our partners around trying to implement. Yeah.
Thank you, John Paul. Any contributions? Okay. Oh, Councillor Moore.
I just wanted to say I welcome this work. Thank you very much. Is the proposal for further expenditure to be from the neighbourhood till May? Till. Thank you.
Okay, we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that at the end, JP. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say how impressed I was with this strategy document. I was expecting something quite dry and I don't know, maybe boring, but it was just really inspiring and well worth a read. So if you're feeling really depressed after everything that's gone on before, then go back to this document and read it. It's absolutely wonderful. And if we can achieve what's in here, it'd be absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, John Paul, to all those that were involved in commissioning it.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any further contributions? Councillor Gassain.
Again, I would just reiterate, I was one of the people who commissioned, made the decision to commission the artwork in Exeter, and they're very lovely, enthusiastic people and very inspiring. And I think the consultation that they made and the innovative ways of consulting the public, including children, was really amazing. And yeah, I'm very pleased with the report, and it is inspiring. And we hope we get some of it done, if not all.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. No other further contributions? John Paul, where's the money coming from?
So the money for the report itself was kindly funded by the University of Exeter. There's no financial considerations as a result of this also.
Oh, somebody doing something for us. Anyway, there's the recommendation before us. I'm going to move it from the chair. Seconder.
Seconder, Chair.
All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So, item 15. We've got the. Sorry to keep you waiting, Simon. Hope it hasn't been too long. Item 15 is the request for variation of Hackney carriage fees. I'll ask Councillor Gassain just to read the recommendation, and then I'll invite you, Simon, to talk to your report.
The recommendations are that the proposals are put out to public consultation to run from 5th of October 2022 until 2nd of November 2022, whole 4 weeks. Second, that a public notice containing the proposed variation table is published in one local newspaper during the above period. And third recommendation is that the matter is brought back to Executive on 29th of November 2022 for determination.
Thank you, Councillor. Simon.
Chair, another cost of living really report, because the taxi trade, which is the red and black vehicles in Exeter with the yellow plates on the back, which is what this report refers to, have not had a tariff change since 2013 for a number of reasons. This is a bit of an anomaly in terms of the council, because everything else with licensing goes to a licensing committee, except this piece of legislation, which has to be passed by executive. So this comes out of a number of months' work from the licensing working group that's looking at our taxi policy at the moment, and follows discussions with the trade that have taken place to come to the recommendation and the proposal that's going out to consultation. Just a few important points. One is that we're going out to a consultation as required under Section 65 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act. We are required to consult. We can't just pass this through. We are following a tested model, which is the Guildford model, which takes in a number of factors and has stood up to challenge in the courts.
and comes out with a figure that takes into account the cost of living within the city of Exeter, based on local data that's input. If passed, and obviously that will come back in the end of November, this will take Exeter to the top of the tariff chart for Devon. Most other local authorities have reviewed theirs in the last 12 months, and take Exeter to 54th in the national list at the time of writing this report. That's an ever-changing feat because councils are continually discussing this matter, but we are towards the top end of the national list out of 360 authorities that have got fees, and does reflect the cost, we believe, the cost of living and what the trade is having to pay out with petrol and things like that in the city.
Thank you, Simon. Just to say, all people deserve a pay rise, Simon. So if you know what I mean, where we are in the table is important to note, but it should necessarily steer us. But the Gilbert thing is what. So, do we have anything to say? Councillor Wood. Oh, sorry, Councillor Johnson.
We will be supportive.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Wood, and then Councillor Morse. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I was at the meeting when this was presented to the trade, and I'm quite pleased to say that the scheme that was used, the Guildford model, is very good because it localises it. It takes into consideration how much it costs to live in here rather than in Exeter rather than in Oakhampton or Bidford or wherever. So it does actually take into those costs. And as Simon said, it's 9 years since we last looked at this, so it's well overdue for that trade because they are limited in what they can charge. It's a very rigid structure as it should be. So I think it's well overdue, and I think this the proposal as it stands is in line with what the trade were asking. In fact, it is very favourably in line with what the trade were asking. So hopefully the consultation will be well received. But certainly pleased with the development today. Thank you.
Councillor Morse and Councillor Denning.
First of all, I have to agree with the idea that everybody deserves a pay rise every once in a while. I wouldn't be much of a Labour Party member if I didn't. Secondly, my thing's planning, so licensing is way out of my comfort zone. But if I'm right, we ask a lot of our Hackney carriage licenses. We don't just hand them out and let you drive any vehicle in any way you want to. And as an impact of what we require people to do, there will be a cost to that that's probably larger than the cost that maybe if we weren't so driven by emissions and by the safety of people inside our vehicles. So I'd like to support this going forward, and I do hope it's as popular with the consultation as it is with us.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Denning.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say more or less the same as Councillor Morse, but also to add on, with the lack of public transport that we have, it's really important that we do have a good taxi service. Everybody needs a pay rise. With the lower tariffs, we could be losing taxi services. We don't need that in Exeter at this point in time. So I would fully support this recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Denning. So there we are, recommendations. Well, we'll have it back here on the 29th of November. Okay, I'll move the recommendations from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour of the recommendations?
That's full recommendation, Chair. Sorry. The recommendations have been carried.
I thought you were going to tell me something different. Right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. At 6:34. Good night, and thank you very much. Very good meeting. Thank you.